Are you slightly frustrated that you always get asked about blockchain and Bitcoin, and in a sense, your whole book was really, about exploring economic systems, whatever. You know what I mean? So it was much broader in a sense, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, one part of me is frustrated because I tend to find in the crypto communities there's a high degree of ignorance about the whole history of financial reform. Yeah. It's like if you go into a standard crypto conference and you critique Bitcoin,
yeah,
like people then say to you, "Oh, so you support the banks then?" It's like, no. I mean, like, by the way, there's like 15 different forms of like critique of banks and like 15 different forms of like how you go about trying to change them. Like crypto is not the first one.
Yeah.
Like it's one of a long line of people trying to like change the banking sector. So like get in line, basically. Yeah. Like they don't often realize this. Right. And so like that's a frustration sometimes is the sort of the lack of awareness of the broader politics of finance, and that's been going on for like a long time, right? Yeah. On the other hand, like what I do like in the crypto space is the fact that actually it has actually sort of excited a whole lot of people who previously weren't particularly interested in thinking about finance.
Yeah.
And so that has actually drawn up a lot of creativity, which is partly why you also then have this problem with the fact that these people don't actually understand or like don't know much about the history of the other attempts, right? Because
yes.
So there's this kind of like there's in some ways it's kind of good that there's a whole bunch of people who don't who've never previously been involved who are suddenly like actually taking an interest in. But it can also be frustrating. But like I like the fact that crypto has kind of like made it brought it to people's minds the idea that actually it is hypothetically possible to change various systems.
Yeah.
And sort of opened up that possibility. The problem though is that in general the crypto community has gone down certain paths that probably aren't going to be very effective. Mm-hmm. So I would like to now see a kind of like maturing of the crypto community to actually do more interesting things.
Can you see it as being definitely a sort of a force for good though? Are you encouraged? Do you feel it can be sort of liberating ultimately? Can it be Imogen Heap? I know the artist. She's been using a sort of cryptocurrency for music, for instance. And
yeah,
can you? And I suppose really to help kind of make a direct connection between the artist and the public.
I mean, bear in mind, like these are not all cryptocurrencies. So like, I don't. Imogen's system was like I think it was Uja music.
I think it's called Mycelia.
Oh yeah, Mycelia. Okay, yeah. There was Mycelia, and there was Ujo, and there's various different attempts of.
Yeah.
And I don't think she was issuing a cryptocurrency. I think it was something like sort of recording rights to tracks or something online. There's a crew in London who's involved in that, yeah, for sure. So like, there's various aspects of. I think. Well, first thing I'd say is like one of the fascinating things about blockchains is it's made a whole bunch of people who were never previously interested in like a lot of things suddenly get interested in things that are quite dull.
Yeah.
Like land property title recording or like music rights management.
Yeah.
These things that were previously like some like guy in a back office does something about this somewhere, right? Suddenly all these people are like excited to try and like think about these infrastructural things that are behind lots of stuff. So in some ways, like that's naturally just like a positive thing because it'll probably like generate ideas as people try to like engage with these like sort of infrastructural things.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's important to make some distinctions between these different systems because right now what's being called blockchain, it actually has multiple different incarnations that are actually quite different to each other. So you have the original cryptocurrencies, which are these basically just tokens that you issue and move around. And you can have debates about which of the tokens moves around better or more secretly or faster or whatever, but they're essentially all the same. They're essentially just tokens that move around.
Yeah.
And then you have the sort of the world of the smart contract systems, which is like stuff like Ethereum and stuff, which is basically like this attempt to use a token infrastructure, but to add these new players onto it, which are essentially these kind of like robots that will like automate certain types of actions, like automated agents on these networks that you can sort of like set up to sort of do certain things if you interact with them.
Yeah.
Kind of like the best sort of way of thinking about that is kind of like a digital vending machines. So you can set things up on the Ethereum network, like these kind of like robot players who, if you interact with them, they'll automatically do certain things. Yeah. So like I give you Ethereum tokens, you give me a share token. You know, you can create these like more complex interactions, and that's kind of like the sort of like Ethereum systems. And you have now this whole world of the sort of like the private blockchain systems, which is basically where people are taking the same infrastructure but closing it down so only certain people can use it. So this is like what the banks are doing, for example. Like they're 40 banks can get together and say, hey, we can run a blockchain between us, and we all know who we are, and we already have to run all this infrastructure between ourselves. We're already having to coordinate payments and movement of shares and stuff. So why don't we all just like potentially use this new architecture to do exactly the same thing in a slightly more efficient way? And that's what's called like private blockchain, which is essentially like glorified centralized data management systems for like corporations. So like you kind of got to like parse out these different aspects of like what's going on. And but yeah, in the long term, like I think there is definitely some interesting potential for creating, for example, large-scale cooperatives using crypto technology. So right now, like the platform cooperatives movement, who people are trying to build these more cooperative versions of big platform companies like Uber and stuff. You gave
an example in one of your talks. You were sort of talking about a kind of decentralized Uber, I think, in a way.
Yeah.
And
so, I mean,
how would that work in theory?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, right? So, like, again, going back to that earlier point I made, like, you have to design the logic of the system prior to deciding, like, whether or not you should do it in a decentralized form or not.
Right.
So, like, you'd really need to think about, like, okay, so, like, right now we don't, like, for example, you might not like Uber because what you have there is like a small group of people in Silicon Valley who own essentially an IT architecture that like millions of people rely upon. And they sort of set all the conditions for how those people will interact. And once those people become reliant on that system, Uber has power. They can just start to like choke people if they can start to like rein it in. They can like change the pricing, and they're essentially a centrally planned economy, right? Mm-hmm. That's what the bosses of Uber run, a centrally planned economy. Yeah. And so like you might not like that, and so like you might say actually what a better system would be is to enable all the drivers, maybe just the drivers.
Okay.
To say like, do you guys want to collectively own the infrastructure upon which you depend?
Yeah.
And like maybe in principle we say yes. Okay. Hypothetically, and you say maybe you're going to have more of a stake in the business. You actually feel more connected. You're not just working for some faceless, dude in Silicon Valley. Maybe you're going to like that. But then there's like a more complex question. Is like, do you want to make day-to-day decisions about the running of the platform? And it's like, well, no, I'm actually driving all day, right? Like, I can't make these decisions. So, like, then you think about governance structures of like how would you actually make a decentralized or like even a centralized cooperative like work,
right?
And then you could decide whether you want to centralize it or decentralize it. Like, so you can say, well, hypothetically, we could use some like crypto architecture to make this like a decentralized cooperative, but like, then you have to like design a whole like way of like voting on things, like make changes, and there's like an ongoing design challenge of like what would be the best way to try to implement these types of systems.
Yeah. Can you see a way in which blockchain or Bitcoin or that sort of technology could be used in the environmental movement? I mean, for instance, recording, I don't know, so poaching activity, for instance, in around the world, somewhere, some sort of central place where things are recorded.
Look, I mean, I don't really see like blockchain as being a transparency technology per se.
Right.
I mean, look, if you had an extremely good network of people on the ground keeping track of poaching activities, so you've got a very good sensory apparatus. So like people who are like seeing stuff.
Right.
and recording stuff, right? Your kind of like data collection layer.
Yeah.
I mean, you can upload it to the internet and it's transparent, right?
Yeah.
You can put it on, like the issue isn't really transparency. Like if you have the data, you can put it on, you can put it through the web and it becomes visible.
Right.
So like, it's not like you need a blockchain to make stuff like that happen, because the real components of that are needing very good data collection capabilities.
Yes.
Right. And then some way to put it, and just and to get around various laws that prevent you from putting data, for example.
Yeah.
So like you need laws in place that allow for transparency, that kind of stuff like that, right? Blockchain is really something that's more about how do you trace the changes to data.
Yeah.
This is what the whole like chaining thing's about, because like what happens in blockchain systems is present data is chained to past data.
Yeah.
Such that if you attempt to change the past data, the present data will be start to get unstable, right? So you'll start to see that somebody's trying to change something in the past because it's all chained together.
Yeah.
So if you want to think about what situations this becomes interesting in, I mean, it's mostly about trying to trace the origins of things.
Mm-hmm.
So you can say, I see this right now and I can trace it back to where it comes from.
Yeah.
Or it's trying to prevent something in the past being tampered with.
Right.
So it's I will see if you're trying to tamper with something in the past.
Yeah.
Or it's trying to sort of say that things in the present that you're recording are dependent upon things in the past. So this is why it's really about a kind of tracking and sort of changing of ownership sort of technology. So it says you previously had this, now you've transferred it to me, and the record shows that this has happened.
Yes.
So it's
yeah,
it's a bit more
which could cut out lawyers,
per se.
It could cut out lawyers. Because
hypothetically, I mean, it just depends on what sort of the things they're sort of looking at this for, tracing diamonds, for example, or I got a friend working on a crypto platform that's around tracing supply chains, so where products have come from and sort of showing their movements.
Oh right, yeah.
And sort of trying to sort of verify that actually, yes, this product that you see right before you now can verifiably be tracked back to a very particular place in the world.
Right.
Rather than somebody just telling you that happened.
Which is where I was trying to use that analogy, maybe in the environment, maybe ivory poaching and all of that. I was wondering whether it could be...
in that situation, yes. But I guess what I've heard, some people have tried to sort of make out the main point about blockchain is about transparency.
Yep.
And it's not really about transparency. It is about transparency, but it's more than that. It's about sort of traceability, or sort of provenance of trying to sort of show where things have come from, and you can sort of verify that that's happened. Yeah. But I mean, then again, this all depends upon, it's kind of theoretical, because it depends upon was the thing recorded correctly somewhere when it was input into the system? Right. Do you have the tracking infrastructure in place to actually track it wherever it goes? It's fine if you just have a digital token, right, which is native to the internet. But if you're now trying to sort of fuse those into sort of real world things,
yes,
you now have the whole logistics infrastructure of the world you have to deal with, which is got all sorts of inefficiencies and things that can go wrong, and forms of corruption. And
sure.
So one of the sort of problems in the crypto space is that they're while it's true that the system itself, in a pure sense, might be kind of trustless and sort of works very well, as soon as you plonk it into the sort of the messiness of the real world, all forms of sort of stuff can start to happen, which are unpredictable.
Yes.
So I think we have yet to see these systems ever actually being tested in real world situations. Or people are trying to do it now, but it's a while to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, if you want a very quick overview of the sort of alternative finance world, at least,
that'd be great.
Your basic components are the alternative currency movements, people who sort of target sort of money systems, which includes your local currencies, mutual credit stuff, a bunch of other sort of things, the crypto world. So you've got your alternative money scene. Yeah. Then there's the alternative banking world, people who try to target banks to say, hey, we can change banks, and that's basically the local banking system. So trying to change the geographic focus of banks. There's like ethical banking trying to change like the mission statements of banks. There's the cooperative banks,
the Triodoses of this world, and so on.
Yeah, but there's also the cooperative banking movement, which sort of focuses on how the ownership structure of banks. So there's like these different like permutations of like how you attempt to alter banking systems. Then you have like your monetary reform movements, people who try to like target like deeper level stuff around how money systems work. And then you have your day-to-day sort of battles about financial policy and stuff. So like all the stuff you see in the newspapers, people like debating what the like capital ratios of banks should be. But this is basically like tinkering with the existing systems.
Yeah.
So like this is kind of like maybe like some of the original stuff around alternative finance, and there's alternative like fund management and so on. Then you have like your sort of, I guess, like the technology intersection with that right now is like, can you make like, say, for example, like a digital bank that's also cooperative, or like, so like this, some of the intriguing sort of little things are going on about, people combining together sort of technological elements with some of these older forms. But bear in mind, like the financial system thing is but one component of an overall economy. Of course, you have lots of other alternative economy movements that go beyond alternative finance.
Yeah.
So like the cooperatives movement in general, for example, is thinking about like ownership structures, management systems for companies. How do you manage a company in a different way?
Yeah.
And obviously these are slightly different questions, right? Like how do you manage a company in a more democratic way is like a different question to like, how do you raise finance in a more sustainable or sort of democratic way, right? Like these are related, but like slightly different components of these questions around economic systems.
Muhammad Yunus, for instance, his work, I suppose, that's another element. There are lots of elements.
Yeah, and look, and there's different like paradigms of thought in alternative economy stuff. Like it's not like everybody agrees. You got like the ecological orientated movements, so like permaculture style of thinking, this kind of thing, which is thinking about how do you create economic systems which essentially abide more by the ecological principles that the earth actually works upon.
Yeah.
Then you have like more sort of socially sort of oriented movements which are thinking about how do we make more fair systems. This is like inner city finance that's actually like non-predatory. So like, finding sort of community finance models that actually work and sort of like low socioeconomic status among communities, right?
Yeah.
Slightly different, Then you have like sort of like anti-surveillance movements and stuff, like people trying to like stop you from being spied upon whilst you like doing your sort of digital life. There's always like various like trajectories that people like find more important than other things.
Yeah.
It's hard to sort of sequence them all into a single kind of innovation.
Sure.
And also they operate at different scales.
Yeah.
So like you have your like localist kind of things, which are very small scale, but then people trying to do bigger scale things. And yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not really saying of what I think is the most important, but like I guess if you are ever thinking about like how you might want to get involved in this type of area, you sort of think along these lines. Like what's the sort of like thing I'm trying to achieve? What scale do I want to operate at?
Yeah.
Sometimes boring old like policy work at government level can be an effective way to like change something.
Yeah.
As much so as starting up some sort of startup or like trying to run an activist campaign. There's multiple different things you can do in this space.
Are you quite excited by it? I mean,
look, I mean, it's like I'm not like a kind of, I have sort of like a yin yang-y kind of thing going on, or sort of like a contradictory thing. And on the one sense, I am open and sort of excited about people trying to try new things.
Yeah.
But I'm not like uncritically optimistic.
Yeah.
I'm not like some kind of entrepreneur who's just like, great, everything's going to be fine, Like I do have a critical side to me, which looks very seriously at like deep structural problems in the world and doesn't try to like gloss over it.
Yeah.
I think the real secret is just like how you sort of balance those impulses.
Yeah.
In the entrepreneur community, they're often extremely like sort of like uncritical and like, actually a friend put it to me like, well, the other day, they said like, there's an obsession with doing without thinking, but in your like academic communities, there's an obsession with thinking without doing.
Right.
And actually, like, there's a lot of this kind of stuff about being prepared to do stuff, but not in an uncritical way. Also, like taking time to really like critically assess the world.
Yeah.
So I spend also lots of time like just like, you know, philosophizing as well as trying to like do projects. So
what next for you, Brett? Where are you traveling? Are you off?
Yeah, I'm traveling a lot. I'll be going to Amsterdam, do stuff with the Transnational Institute, which works with lots of movements from around the world. And then I'm going to Rotterdam, Berlin. But yeah, I'm basically traveling around, trying to like collaborating with different groups. Like in Berlin, I'm going to be doing stuff on the ethics of financial technology. Mm-hmm. So doing a talk there on that, sort of thinking about what are the ethical implications of digital systems.
Yeah.
Does it affect the way we perceive finance? Does it affect how we think about the consequences and that kind of stuff?
Couldn't help but notice that I saw on your LinkedIn page actually that while you were at Cambridge, you were involved with world music. What was that about?
Yeah.
What was that about?
It was a Cambridge World Music Society. There was a group of us, and we used to like. I guess this term "world music" it sort of refers to any music that's not part of like Western Europe or something.
Yeah, exactly.
And
it's one of the worst phrases ever used, but but in a sense, it kind of does a job, doesn't it?
But yeah, there was a few of us, and we used to kind of do these like fusion gigs. So there was like a Welsh singer.
Yeah.
There was a guy from India who used to play electric guitar, but like used to play it like a sitar, so it would sound like a sitar.
Oh wow!
It was amazing.
Yeah.
We had what is that? It was like a Hungarian guy, I think, and stuff like. There's a bunch of us who had like different. I play guitar and stuff.
You play guitar,
and then we would get together and do these. We'd do these gigs. So we would sort of like have fusion, sort of like music of various sorts. There was a tabla player as well.
Oh wow!
Yeah, cool.
Somebody I interviewed, I think you might enjoy. I don't know whether you ever saw. It was Jamie Catto, who was the founder of Faithless.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
And then, but he and Duncan Bridgman, who is a record producer, went around the world and they made this extraordinary film called One Giant Leap.
All right.
I don't know whether you know it, but what they did was Jamie would. If you go to the magazine, you'll see the interview I did with him, and I'll put up But they won Emmys around the world. Basically, what they would do is put down a track, say in the UK, and then they take it to somewhere in China, and he'd hear it and put it. So it built up. But it made this incredible CD of beautiful music, and they recorded going around interviewing kind of wise people around the world. It could be sort of Kurt Vonnegut, it could be Anita Roddick of the Body Shop at that time, it could be indigenous leaders around the world, and produced this extraordinary film called One Giant Leap. And
that's cool. That's cool. I've seen some like related kind of things, but I'll take a look at that.
I'll send you the link because it's up on.
I still like play a lot of music. I haven't played in a band for a while, but it's quite a big part of my existence. Yeah, I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for doing this. I appreciate it. The busy old day that you've had. So
yeah, no worries.
That's brilliant.
Well,
thanks a lot.
Looks interesting. So,
all the best.
Keep me in the loop.
I will.
Cheers.
Cheers.